Hi all. So we were discussing why Mongols were so successful in their wars. In last lecture we have completed nomadic lifestyle, Mongolian horse and composite bow, Mongol cavalry, military organization, technology. Now we will discuss other factors which proved decisive. So next one is mail system. Yum postal system was having local relay and supply centers. A messenger would typically travel 40 kilometers from one station to the next, either receiving a fresh rested horse or relaying the mail to the next rider to ensure the speediest possible delivery. The mail riders regularly covered 200 kilometers per day. When the Great Khan died in Karakoram, news reached the Mongol forces under Batu Khan in Central Europe within 4 to 6 weeks. So this shows the speed and efficiency of this system. Genghis Khan and Ogedei Khan built a wide system of roads, one of which carved through the Altai mountains. Skillful use of couriers enabled these armies to maintain contact with each other and with their higher leaders. That's why army generals operating as far as 1000 kilometers will remain in contact and will get information timely and will be able to change the plans at suitable times. During Kublai's reign, the Yuan communication system consisted of some 1400 postal stations which used 50,000 horses, 8400 oxen, 6700 mules, 4000 carts and 6000 boats. This shows the how this system was. Next next factor is military leadership. Leaders of two men used to be appointed by Great Khan himself. Keshik, that was bodyguard of Great Khan, evolved just from bodyguard and became school to learn command and military tactics and to learn how to lead army and conquer and govern regions. So from Keshik, the commanders and governors were appointed in field. Mongol military leadership was excellent. Subutai directed more than 20 campaigns and won 65 pitched battles, during which he conquered or overran more territory than any other commander in history as part of the expansion of Mongol Empire. So this extraordinary leadership took advantage of both steppe and sedentary tools of warfare. Their generals tried to anticipate every possible enemy move and then trained their soldiers to counteract those moves. One example is this Battle of Mohe, in which when Hungarian forces they got initial success at this bridge. This was the river, this was only bridge 200-meter long, and when initially this uh, Hungarian forces they got the success, then during 4 hours from morning 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Subtai crossed with 30,000 of his cavalrymen from this place and he attacked the Germanian forces from this side. He cordoned them and he attacked and he won this battle. So this was the epic battle. This shows the military leadership. Next factor is pragmatism and flexibility. A key to Mongol success in war and conquest was the melding of traditional and still effective steppe tactics with new tactics and forms of warfare they encountered. Though the expansion of their Throughout the expansion of their empire, the Mongol remained pragmatic and open to incorporating new methods of waging war and adopting new weapons and tactics. They ensured their soldiers were properly trained to execute the appropriate tactics when ordered. The adoption of warriors and knowledge of defector, vassals, and captives proved decisive. Each culture Mongols encountered and conquered provided them new resources and tools and manpower. Mongols themselves remaining primarily light horse archers, they used northern Chinese infantry and siege engineers, southern Chinese and Korean naval knowledge, Khitan, Georgian and Turkic horse archers, Armenian, Iranian and Georgian heavy cavalry in wars. Next factor was efficient logistics. Soldiers of the Mongol army functioned independently of supply lines, considerably speeding up army movement. Every urban will be self-sustainable, having sufficient dry meat, cheese, curd. They will utilize spare horses for carrying food, spare bow, arrow, and tent. Dried meat was an especially useful staple for travelers and roaming Mongol warriors. They will keep dried meat, onion, rice in bag under saddle. Due to friction and heat of body of rider and horse, it will be converted to stew type. Mares would be preferred providing both milk and blood. If horse die during march, it would be cut and meat will be utilized. Even nothing will be wasted. Even bones will be used in broth. So, as horses were grass fed, no need to arrange supplies for fodder and grains. And whenever they are operating, they will do the hunting in those areas, and local resources will also be utilized. The local farmers and peasants will be forced to supply to yum centers. Because Mongols, they always march without families. Even the royal princes were not able to take their family. So this also helped in logistics. But when non-Mongol became majority of fighting force, the logistics arrangement were being done by Khans. For example, when Hulegu Khan was operating in Middle East, Great Khan Mongke made sure sufficient supply through all yam centers and cities. Next factor was careful planning. When preparing for war, the Mongols took several steps. First, they conducted a census in order to organize the mobilization of their troops. They also accumulated intelligence on their opponents, planning and psychological warfare, collection of map campsites, routes. Only after sufficient intelligence had been obtained did they make a declaration of hostilities. At a Kuriltai or Mongol assembly, the strategy for the upcoming war was agreed upon and the commanders will be chosen. Points of RV were established and mobilization began in at the earliest. So, although campaigns were meticulously planned, the Mongol generals maintained a high degree of independence. They could fulfill their objectives in their own way so long as they abided to the overall timetable. Due to their extensive planning, the Mongols were better informed about their opponents than most medieval times armies. The outcome was that for more than 150 years of conquest from Asia to Europe, they suffered no serious defeats. Next factor is battle tactics. The Mongols transformed steppe tactics into sophisticated operational concepts that were characteristics of a permanent army. As the Mongols' methods of war and conquest became increasingly well organized, the Mongol army evolved from a tribal force into a true army. So there are few tactics used by Mongols. One is Fabian tactic, Karakol tactic, fend retreat, flanking tactic, and double envelopment or Nerge technique, and then psychological tactics and means of deception. Let us discuss Fabian technique. Tactics. At times, the Mongols avoided combat with the enemy until they found an ideal location for battle or had regrouped far furlong forces to confront their opponent. Fabian tactics involved the avoidance of all direct contact with the enemy. The Mongol army often divided into small groups to avoid being surrendered. But when they regrouped and launched a surprise attack on the enemy at a more opportune time, you can see these are the Mongols together. Then when enemy is in a strong position, Mongols disperse into small groups, and at more opportune time the enemy moves to a weaker position, Mongol regroup and they attack. Fabian tactics also exhausted the enemy through avoidance of combat, particularly when the enemy forces maintained a strong defensive posture, whether in the open or in the fortress. As long as the Mongols remained in the vicinity, the constant stress of anticipating an attack wore down the enemy. When the Mongols were confronted by an enemy who, for instance, planted spears in ground to prevent cavalry charges, they responded by withdrawing the bulk of their forces, leaving behind a few detachments to harass the enemy. Eventually, their enemy, having either decided that main Mongol force had withdrawn for strategic reasons or had moved away because of hunger or thirst, will emerge from their defenses. Then the Mongol army force would return to destroy them. So main point is to attack the enemy at opportunist time, like optimum utilization. So this is the main core of Fabian tactics. They will attack on the enemy only at the right time, not before that. Then next tactic is Karakol tactic. The Mongols combined the arrow storm with hit and run tactics. approximately 80 men in each Jaggun. Jaggun is like having 100 men, so 80 of them participated. Remaining 20 acted as heavy cavalry with lancers. So each Jaggun sent 20 men per wave of attackers. The waves fired several arrows as they charged and then circled back to the Mongols' lines after completing their charge. They loosed their final shot roughly 40 to 50 meters from the enemy lines before wheeling around. This distance was close enough to pierce armor, but distance enough to evade a countercharge. While circling back, the Mongol often used the aforementioned Parthian shot. They changed horses frequently to keep their mounts fresh. Since each man was equipped with 60 arrows, the Mongol could maintain this barrage for almost an hour and perhaps longer. So you can see these are Mongols. They are coming in groups 20 at a time and they are shooting the arrows, Parthian shot 40-50 meters away and then going back. So 4 groups like 80 people from a Jaggun they are participating, 20 are waiting there as heavy lancers, and you can see they will change the horses to take advantage of speed. So this usually facing against armies who couldn't amass such number of horsemen and riders, Mongol enjoyed great striking ability. Their tactics of maximizing this advantage and minimize direct contact with the enemy, Karakol, was used. This required great coordination and discipline to avoid accident, extraordinary effective and immense psychological effect. Bring fear and anxiety to opponents. Seeing barrage of arrows and large number of horses. After enemy weakened, lancers who were waiting here, they will charge. Them fleeing enemy was unable to resist, following Mongol to kill them easily, allowing Mongol to kill them easily. But if enemy's cavalrymen attempted to charge Mongol Karakol, that allows Mongol to execute a feigned retreat. Like if they decide to charge, then Mongols will do the feigned retreat. What is that? That is next tactics. The feigned retreat was a classic tactic of steppe warfare practiced since ancient times. A token force charged the enemy and then retreated, pulling the enemy after them in pursuit. The retreat might extend a great distance in order to stretch the enemy's rank and formations. Then, at a pre-arranged location, other Mongol forces attacked from flanks while the initial force wheeled around and attacked the enemy's front. You can see. So, these are the enemies they are launching to Mongols. So, Mongols send token force out to meet the enemy. These are the enemies, these are the Mongols. So, first token force have been sent to enemies. Then, as the enemy approaches towards them, the small Mongol force quickly retreats. They start retreating. Then, while at a specified location, the token force turns on the pursuing enemy and attack. Now, this token force again turn back and attack the enemies from front, and a hidden Mongol force attack the enemy from here. So, now this enemy will be destroyed. Perhaps the most renowned use of the feigned retreat technique took place in 1223 when Mongols General Jeve and Subetai encountered a combined army of Kipchak, Turks and Rus princes along the Dnieper river. The Mongols retreated, luring the Kipchak and Rus several days, like for 9 days, deeper into the steppe until they reached the Kalka river. Here the main Mongol force waited and promptly destroyed the allied forces. Now, if enemy did not pursue around and held position in orderly formation, so what they will do, like in this case the enemy pursued, but if enemy didn't pursue and they held the position in orderly formation, then this flanking tactics and double envelopment, also called open the end tactics, also called nage technique. So stationary Fu, or the one holding up a wagon fort as Battle of Mohe in 1242, will soon be trapped in Nage. Mongols hunting circle, cordoning of the area surrounding, gradually closing, cutting avenues of escape and driving panic to villages towards target access to resources. Destroying villages at strategic level. So what is this? The Nage technique I discussed in previous lecture also. They used to do the special hunts. In this case, if the target, if this is the enemy target and they are holding their defenses. So Mongols will cordon the complete area and then they will start closing towards the center, towards this target, destroying all the villages. Okay, the Mongols spread out first, encircling the enemy. Number two, the Mongols tighten the circle. They intentionally leave an apparent escape, that I will discuss. And this is how the negative technique were being used in warfare. If you remember, when they used negative technique in hunting, they will not allow any animal to escape. But in warfare, at a strategic level, means at bigger level, no escape was allowed, everything will be destroyed. But in a tactical level, like when they are close to encircling these enemy troops, they will intentionally leave one escape route for enemies, because Mongol understood psychology of men and animals. When cornered, no way to run, they fight to the death. But provided to see another day, either a tiger or man sees the chance to live and they try to flee. So they will intentionally leave the escape route, enemy will flee from that route, and fleeing enemy gives two advantage. First, depleting enemy strength, this strength will be depleted, some enemy will try to flee. And second, fleeing enemy give no resistance and easily massacred. So this is how negative technique was being utilized by Mongols in warfare. Now, psychological tactics and means of deception. The Mongols realized it was more efficient to convince a city or fortress to surrender without resistance rather than to be drawn into a siege. As a consequence, the Mongols gained a notorious reputation for massacres. Their massacres served several purposes. The Mongols could not maintain strong garrisons and so preferred to wipe out the whole areas that appeared troublesome. Second, as news of the massacre spread, particularly in case where the defenders had put up a determined resistance, other cities and peoples were intimidated and chose to surrender to Mongols. Third, a massacre served a powerful deterrent to rebellion. Pursuit of leaders. In his first few campaigns, his failure to eliminate the opposing leaders allowed them to regroup their forces. This is about Genghis Khan. And they again start the conflict. So Genghis Khan learned from this experience, and in his later campaigns, the merciless pursuit of the enemy commanders evolved into a standing operational procedure (SOP). Annihilation of field army. Screens of scouts ensured that the Mongol could rapidly locate enemy armies. After defeating an army, the Mongols pursued it until it was destroyed. This strategy had two obvious advantages. First, it prevented the principal city from communicating with other cities that might have come to its aid. Second, refugees from the smaller cities fled to the last stronghold. Reports from the defeated cities and the stream of refugees not only reduced the morale of the inhabitants and garrison of the principal city, but also strained its resources of food and water. Upon destruction of the field army, the Mongols were then free to lay siege without interference. In addition, the Mongols used propaganda and often spread rumors in advance that exaggerated the size of their army. In 1258, Mongke Khan invaded Sichuan with 40,000 but spread rumors of 1 lakh. The Mongols resorted to other subterfuges to confuse and intimidate their enemies. When he fought the Naimans in 1204, Genghis Khan ordered his soldiers to set up camp on the steppe in western Mongolia, and in order to hide the true size of the army, he commanded that each soldier should light 5 campfires, giving the impression of a more numerous armies. When confronting numerically superior forces, the Mongols often sent troops back to stir up dust behind their own lines by means of branches tied to the tails of their horses to create the illusion of approaching reinforcement. They also mounted dummies on their spear horses and rode in single file to mask their numbers at a distance. With their pre-planned schedule and their skillful use of scouts, the Mongol marched divided but fought united. So, because their force marched in small detachments, their advance was not slowed by large columns that stretched for miles. and for their opponents were not able to concentrate their forces before the Mongols appeared on many fronts at the same time. So we have discussed all these factors which led to success of Mongol war machine, and they won this area comparatively under a short span of time. So this was all about Mongol Empire. Take care. Bye.